Game of Thrones Season 8 will most likely be some of the most cinematic and insane moments in television history, not just on the small screen, but on the big screen as well. In this video, I want to discuss a plot outline that was sent to me about the very first episode from Game of Thrones Season 8. Now, these plot outlines and these plot leaks, and really any of these leaks, are meant to be taken with a grain of salt. Remember, however unplausible and unlikely they may seem, at the very least, they're entertaining. Now let's begin. Before we get started, can you guys please slap a like on this video? The like goal will be 42. Also, if you could please make sure you're subscribed and then go ahead and turn your notifications on all the way. That way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this long night. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the person who leaked this information to me did respectfully ask to be kept unidentified. Now, I don't know if that adds credibility to these leaks because they were afraid that they may get found out and they may lose their job and potentially end up with a lawsuit. But either way, the very first opening shot of the season is set to take place with the Night King. The Night King is flying towards the last hearth on the back of Viserion. We get close-ups of the White Giants, and this is mainly to just show how massive his army has grown. The battle quickly begins, and we cut to the opening credits. So I'm assuming what they mean by that is that the Night King's army go ahead and attacks the last hearth, and this is right when the credits pick up. Now, I'm going to say that does kind of sound like an intro to Game of Thrones. I like the fact that they're starting off with the White Walkers and the ultimate threat, showing us that, there's only 6 episodes left. We're going to be trimming the fat. The second shot opens with Tormund and Beric and a few survivors from Eastwatch. They're tailing behind the Night King's army, and they're trying to determine his route into Westeros. They then have a discussion about how to warn Jon of the oncoming threat, and if it's worth helping out at the last hearth. Tormund volunteers, and Beric then takes off. We then cut to Jon and Daenerys on the boat, and they're still apparently at this point 1 or 2 episodes away from arriving at Winterfell, as they haven't even made it back from that initial meeting with Cersei last season. Tyrion, Jon, and Daenerys are all discussing the politics of their arrival in the north, like what's the best way to do it. The way this scene is filmed makes it clear that Tyrion knows of Jon and Daenerys about both sex, and that he appears to be a tad jealous. The scene ends with Jon explaining to Dany that she should not arrive on Dragonback the same way she did in King's Landing, and she explains that her dragons are one of the only things that are keeping them safe, and not having them nearby her at all times is sort of foolish. Tyrion proposes that Jon arrives a few days ahead of Daenerys to brief everyone at Winterfell and explain to them what's going on. I'm not really given any more information about, what happens at the end of that conversation. I guess it sort of cuts on to the next shots, but some analysis quickly of that is it kind of is a long track with the way that Season 7 was going. You'll remember Tyrion did walk up outside of Jon and Daenerys' room when they were having sex, and it is known that Tyrion is in love with his employer. It is stated in several interviews, and Peter Dinklage himself has said it's kind of awkward going into Season 7 with the fact that, Jon and Daenerys are courting each other, and Tyrion is clearly in love with Daenerys. So that little tad bit does seem on par. As far as it being, known, like being made known as like a point of conversation, I don't really know how that would play out. Tyrion's not one to just like throw his feelings out there. The fact that they're discussing how they're going to be received when they arrive in Winterfell is definitely going to be, I totally agree with that. That's going to be one of the first conversations everyone will have if they're smart. We do know that the whole purpose of Daenerys arriving in King's Landing the way she did was sort of to intimidate Cersei and let her know that she's not one to play games with. So her arriving at Winterfell the same way is not going to, appear well. And Tyrion has stated before that the Northerners are very suspicious folks. So arriving on a fire-breathing monster, one that they've never seen before, is not the best idea. So I do agree with that part of this plot leak. Next up, we have what is described as a few scenes in Winterfell. Arya is shown training with a group of non-warriors, basically enacting the plan that Jon mentioned in episode 1 of last season that, every man, woman, and child is going to be fighting, whether they can or can't, this is everyone's war. And then we're shown Bran and Sam discussing whether they should tell Jon the truth, since Bran peeped in and saw that him and Daenerys are now a thing. Not much info on what they decide to do is mentioned, but Sansa begins sending ravens all throughout the north seeking aid and pulling resources. It's stated that she is showing how much she is growing as a leader. Okay, so I sort of agree with that, and I can kind of see that happening. We do know that Sansa mentioned that all of the food should be go ahead and start being sent to Winterfell, because we do know that once the long night comes, there's not going to be time to do that. So that sort of follows along with the theme of that. As far as Arya training a group of non-warriors. My face lit up like that, and I'm extremely excited about hearing something like that. I just feel like, that's something that I've been wanting to see since season 7. I wanted to see them enact that then, so I'm like fanboying over that moment. So I kind of agree with, where this plot leak is saying what's going to be happening in Winterfell in the first episode. It's kind of like they were obviously paying attention to season 7. I can see most of this happening. As far as like Bran and Sam discussing, whether they should tell Jon the truth, I don't know if it's even going to be a discussion. I think that Bran and Sam are going to immediately decide that, that's the best option that they should do. As far as Bran spying in, I don't know if that will be a thing. I mean, yeah, he totally could, but it may not even be mentioned. It may just be that, he knows that Jon is going to end up with Daenerys. I just don't know whether it'll be mentioned how Bran is a peeping Tom. I don't really see that being, anything. Then, one of the last scenes we're shown in Winterfell in this episode is all of the Starks, minus Jon, obviously, because he hasn't arrived yet, but they're all sitting at the famous table inside the Winterfell dining room, and Bran brings up the fact that he's received word that Jon will be returning with Dany and her dragons, and this will be happening in a few days. Sansa brings up how Cersei won't let an enemy like Jon and Daenerys, plus the North, go unchecked. She insists that Cersei will betray Jon the first chance he gets. Then we cut to King's Landing, and it's unclear on how that conversation ended. Now, super obvious there is continuing with a theme that, yes, Sansa will definitely be the first person to mention how Cersei will betray everyone. If Tyrion doesn't mention it to Jon and Daenerys on the boat, then Sansa will mention it to Jon as soon as he gets to Winterfell. It was foolish to ever trust her, and I honestly think that, if something like this does happen, I could see Sansa maybe not trusting Tyrion so much, staying on that same sort of train of thought. My brain's kind of lighting up here. If you guys want me to do a video about the interactions between Sansa and Tyrion, as they may be the only two remaining game players at the end of the season next season, let me know if you guys want me to do a video on Sansa and Tyrion and how their dynamics are going to be, and maybe I'll even do one on Jon and Daenerys once they find out his lineage. Oh wait, I have, and that's linked down below in the description. Okay, so according to this plot leak, and that's air quotations there, the very last part of the episode takes place down in King's Landing. In the first scene, right after Sansa mentions Cersei's betrayal, the camera ends up zooming in on Cersei, and she's writing a letter telling Euron to take the Golden Company and attack Winterfell before Jon returns. Now, I credit to this person because that is right on par with Game of Thrones. I totally see them lining up scenes like that. If you remember all the way back in season 2 and season 3, and in the novels, scenes are set up where Dany's going through something and then we cut to Jon. And there's all that sort of like intermeshing and foreshadowing in scenes. So the fact that Cersei is called out on her betrayal, and then the next time we see her, she's actively pursuing that betrayal, it may be a little bit too good, but I totally agree and think that that's online. Anyway, she writes a letter telling Euron to take the Golden Company and attack Winterfell before Jon returns there. Cersei is then interrupted by Qyburn walking in and telling her how starvation is rampant throughout King's Landing and that soon he will have plenty of subjects to experiment on. Now, they do say that there's some emphasis on the fact that there's a bit of a lingering moment once Qyburn mentions subjects, so I think that's meant to lead us into thinking that Qyburn is actively up to something. And then Cersei's Queen Guard breaks that conversation up, and he explains that Jaime has taken 2/3 of the Lannister army and has led them seemingly north to go and fight the White Walkers. A few scenes later, the episode ends with Cersei laying in a bed, almost asleep, but then suddenly wakes with intense pains clutching her stomach, and she screams as the episode cuts to black. Oh man, I didn't add in my, little commentary there at the last part, because that's sort of what happens with all these. They fall apart towards the end. Now, it would be extremely cliche, or at least it seems cliche at this point, to have Cersei having a miscarriage. And I think that may be because we were expecting it in Season 7. There was some sort of plot leak that mentioned that that would happen back in Season 7. And then it's also been mentioned in almost every single plot leak that has been released. We call them fleekers over on Reddit/FreeFolk, but every single one of them mentions the fact that Cersei's going to have a miscarriage. So the fact that this plot leak has that in there, I don't really know what to say about it. I mean, I think it would be continuing with the theme of Game of Thrones, but like I said, it just seems a little bit too cliche. The fact that Jaime took some of her army and is headed up north, I've been saying since Season 7 ended that that would be the smartest thing Jaime can do. Oh man, this plot leak had some really good moments, but then it also had some boo-boo moments, and it kind of makes me want to call this person out for being a fake leaker. But you all, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Please slap a like on this video. The like goal will be 42. And if you guys do enjoy this, well, I was sent an outline for episodes 2 and 3. That's all I've received so far. But if you guys want me to do another short little video discussing this potential leak, which we all know is bullshit, and it's meant to be taken with less than a grain of salt, but it's still entertaining. If you guys want me to do another follow-up video discussing episode 2, make sure you let me know down in the comment section. I do read every single one of them. Alright, I want to thank you all so much for watching. Super special shout out to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews. Also, I've actually launched a GoFundMe and an Amazon wish list to bring you guys higher quality content. Both of those are linked down below in the description. I want to thank you all again so much for watching. My name's Mark and this has been Sir Hunt's Reviews.